Hello and welcome to the Al Monitor Brief. It's Friday, June 14th. I'm Kristen Tallman. Today's main segment is a conversation with Al Monitor's chief business correspondent, Jack Dutton, on how banks like Barclays and music festivals are seeing the impact of Israel's war in Gaza back at home in countries such as the UK. But first, let's get you caught up on the headlines. Israeli strikes hit Gaza on Friday as truce talks with Hamas militants failed to progress and tensions surged on Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Grieving families kept a vigil in the terminal of an Indian airport on Friday as the bodies of dozens of migrant workers killed in a Kuwait building fire returned home. More than 1 million Muslim pilgrims were in Mecca Friday for the start of a Hajj pilgrimage held against the grim backdrop of the Gaza war and an exhausting summer heat. A suspected Israeli strike rocked southern Lebanon late Thursday night local time, killing at least 2 people amid increasing tensions between Israel and Hezbollah. 2 cruise missiles launched by Yemen's Houthi rebels struck a bulk cargo carrier in the Gulf of Aden on Thursday, severely injuring a sailor who was evacuated by American forces. And Palestinian officials said Israeli troops killed 3 Palestinians in a raid in a town in the occupied West Bank Thursday, as Israel's military reported it had eliminated 2 wanted suspects. Now, on to the main segment. Hey, Jack, welcome to the Al Monitor Brief.
Thanks for having me on, Kristen.
So, Jack, you've reported and written in the last few weeks a lot about how Israel's war in Gaza has caused ripple effects into societies and countries where protesters, citizens, civilians are deeply upset about what's happening. And it's caused festivals to announce that headliners have pulled out and vandalism on banks. Can you walk us through just what your reporting has been?
Sure. So in the last 2 months, as the UK summers tried to kick off in earnest and the festival season has started, we've seen a few festivals with banks sponsoring them, and those banks have been accused of having strong financial ties to Israel. And as a result of their association with these festivals, we've seen quite a few boycotts, not just on the fans and activist side, but also even artists pulling out these festivals. Music festivals are a major part of Britain's cultural DNA. There's about 500 of them a year, and they contribute to £1.75 billion to the UK economy and play a vital role in the £6 billion music industry for the UK. And they also bring in a lot of foreign tourists to the UK. So the number of music tourists attending live events in the UK in 2022 was 14.4 billion. So it's big numbers. And one of the more recent examples where we've seen this is festivals which have been associated with Barclays Bank, which is one of the biggest banks in the UK, are very active abroad as well. And yesterday, we saw multiple bands pull out of Download Festival, which is the UK's biggest rock, metal and punk festival, which takes place beginning tomorrow and ends on Sunday. And Barclaycard is one of the official sponsors with the event. And Barclay has been accused by activists, including the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, of having £6.1 billion, around $7.5 billion in loans and underwriting to 9 Israeli companies that manufacture equipment that's been used in the Gaza Strip in the war against Hamas. And Barclays has also been accused of holding over £2 million or $2.5 million of shares in these companies. And among the companies include Elbit, which is the Israeli defense manufacturer, one of the biggest in the country, as well as supplying the Israeli military weapons to use in Gaza. They've also been supplying the UK armed forces as well with equipment and training, and have quite a significant presence in the UK. So there's been a lot of action against these corporate sponsors of festivals, especially if they have links to Israel.
Wow, fascinating. It's also crazy telling how far these protesters will go to find links and even go back to, who's banking what and underwriting this. I mean, I don't even know if the average person who quite understands what underwriting is. What is their call then on these festivals and Barclays? Is it to just, obviously Barclays isn't going to shut down overnight. What is it that they are looking for? And, do you see this as something that will continue?
I think a lot of the activists are saying to not to the artists, because the artists have a lot of cultural sway and influence, to not support these festivals. And we saw in May in Brighton, the Great Escape Festival, we had 120 artists refuse to play the festival because Barclays Bank was also sponsoring that. On a kind of consumer level, that a lot of the activists are encouraging people to switch banks to more inverted commas ethical banks, or banks they can try and track what financial services they're giving to which companies, and hoping those companies are ethical. However, the more you research banks and what they're involved in, the harder it is to find a bank with its hands fully clean, so to speak. And I guess people have different takes on this. People have different understandings of financing as well. For example, Barclays has commented extensively on this, and they say they haven't directly invested in these companies like Elbit and these Israeli weapons companies. However, they do hold shares in relation to client-driven transactions. So they appear on the share register, but they're not investors. So they're not making profits. They say they're not making profits out of these companies, but they're clearly trading shares. So they are very involved in these companies, and they are providing financial assistance to these companies. But then again, they've said it's fine. They say they're helping defense companies which are NATO allies and train the military in the UK, which I guess Elbit is one of those. However, you're seeing this elsewhere as well. We saw this in the US at SXSW Festival in Austin in Texas in March. The festival sponsors there included RTX Corporation, which was, I think it was formerly named as Raytheon, and its subsidiaries Collins Aerospace and BAE Systems. And these companies create some of the weapons which Israel Defense Forces have been deploying and using to bomb Gaza. And the US Army was also listed as super sponsor of the event. So you had quite a few artists pull out, including some of the Irish artists. And it's quite interesting with Ireland, because Ireland is one of the countries which is going to, and said publicly that it's going to acknowledge Palestine as an independent state. So that's quite interesting to watch. And we also saw with the Eurovision Song Contest in May that thousands called for a boycott of Israel and the Israeli entrant Eden Golan, who by the Israeli security services was told at the Eurovision event in May the 9th to stay in a hotel room because of the protesters outside being quite ardently pro-Palestinian, and they worried about our safety. In terms of this carrying on, I think we'll see a lot more of it this summer. We've got many more festivals on the calendar, including some which are sponsored by some of the bigger banks who have not managed to eschew action and protests from different protesters and activists. So Barclays, for example, sponsors Latitude Festival, the Isle of Wight Festival, and several other festivals in the UK in the summer. So I think we'll see more of that. And there's a growing calls by the boycott, divest sanctions movement to increase pressure on these public figures and artists to take a stand, even if they're looking to avoid wading into the political debate.
Well, yeah, there's much afoot, Jack. Thank you so much for keeping our audience up to the minute, and we will be sure to check in with you as the story develops.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for tuning in to the Al Monitor Brief. You can read all these stories and more impacting the region at almonitor.com.